You've been following this HPV virus thing. I've never been more confused by a state policy than I am on this one.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
But we've got, we got some citizens in the building and certainly here on the show tonight to try to explain why they're opposed to a state Department of Health policy that mandates the HPV virus vaccine for kids getting into 7th grade. Girls, I guess. Is it girls? Is it girls? Yes?
Both.
It's both, boys and girls. We'll get into this. Kind of a stutter step start to the show, but sometimes you have those kinds of days. Welcome into my state of mind. We've got a lot going on here tonight. Let us run to the rundown and kind of list what's happening. Yeah, so the trip's been canceled, and Davos, Switzerland will have to do without our governor. Here is the headline that is driving some of the story, although there's been some developments on my radio program today that will drive it further. That's the governor's tweet. Can we pop that up again, Laura, real quick, so I can read it again? I was excited to represent Rhode Island and Davos, but your safety is the most important thing. And of course, the governor is wanting to be safe than sorry about, being away when we're in such jeopardy, because a few inches of snow could kill us.
Safety of Rhode Island comes first. Right now, we don't know how bad the snow is going to be. There are potential for coastal flooding, a lot of wires down. So I figured better be safe than sorry. Stay put. I learned from last year's blizzard, it matters that the governor's in town and in charge, and so I'm sure that now that I'm not going, we're going to get a dusting. But just in case, better be safe than sorry.
She also said in that same discussion with the press that she wanted to be here to take care of Rhode Islanders, which is the most ridiculous sentiment in the world. I don't need a mommy, I don't need a nanny, and I don't need Governor Raimondo taking care of me. What I do want her to do is assume responsibility. She thinks she needs to assume responsibility to take care of emergency management. So I'm ambivalent about whether she went on the trip or not. If the trip was legitimate, I think she probably could have sent or assigned the lieutenant governor, who is a fairly able human being, to manage snow operations, since he has a tie to the Emergency Management Agency by statute anyway. All of that aside, one of the reasons why the governor may have been inclined to say, you know what, less trouble not going, is that the funding for this trip has blown up. Yeah, because the University of Rhode Island Foundation has decided that it was wrong for them to forward the $7,000 for the trip, because they found out that people understood what we've been trying to say all along here. That's inappropriate. And the chairperson was on my radio program today and explained the feedback was brutal.
Feedback was in a number of different forms, ranging from, people resigning from the trustee group and from other groups around campus, important groups around campus. So it ranged from that to other people who had, promised a significant gifts, saying that they were going to reverse those plans, to lots and lots of people who just felt that this was not appropriate.
People understand that it's not appropriate to use a URI Foundation for a trip like that. Now, look, the trip may have been legitimate. If it's legitimate, charge the taxpayers. You're the governor elected by the taxpayers. You got state business, economic development. Make it a taxpayer line item. Don't play footloose and fancy free trying to hide it by saying, well, it's not that legitimate. It's going to be this funding. It's wrong. And, down the line, I kind of rearranged the rundown today mistakenly. We're going to hit another issue here that is in the same vein of wrong thinking, even worse, and a lot more money. So stay tuned for that commentary coming up in about, 2 minutes. In the meantime, the police state allegation has been made by the American Truckers Association. The headline on this reads as follows. This is the ongoing roadworks toll program that the governor wants to put together. I may have told you, and I know I did, not only on the radio, on WPRO, but here a few weeks ago, that the state DOT director more or less shoved into the state police colonel's mouth the attribution to the notion that if trucks ever avoid the tolls that they plan to put up and go on the local roads, well, the state police will get them. Well, guess what? The truckers are fighting back on that.
This is not about the state police. This is about the statements that were issued by Director Elvedi and concurred with by the governor that they would, in fact, they floated out that they would, in fact, create essentially a police state to police commerce, to police our business, and to take legislative measures to interrupt the flow of commerce.
There is so much legal difficulty with Governor Raimondo's truck toll program, I can't even begin to list, but that's a certain and key one. In the meantime, the Republicans they're out there battling. They've now got a waste-o-meter. If the state's wasting money, they're going to total it up. Now remember, the Republicans are suggesting that we can pay for the bridge repair as we go, and I support them in that effort. I have to laugh, though, at the waste-o-meter. We have a picture of that, or it's in the hallway somewhere. And then you're supposed to call a number. Go to our Twitter feed, Dan York Show on Twitter, and we'll give you the number. You'd think that they would think it through, make a big deal of that, like brand it with a, 555 waste, or email us at wasteometer@wasteometer.com or something. No, you call the State House number and leave a message. And by the way, you can anonymously, because they must have all these investigators to figure out what you're saying is true. Good idea, horrendous execution. It happens with the state Republican Party from time to time. In the meantime, to the House Speaker and his discomfort, and it kind of circles back to that trip canceled conversation. The headline today grabbed me. Listen, I don't look for attribution, and I was the first one to say, and all that kind of nonsense, but on this one, I just feel like I got to. A couple of weeks ago, I told you this hire was absolutely out of order, out of bounds, completely non-constitutional. I peppered everybody in the world about it that I possibly can, and all of a sudden now it's starting to resonate around the state on other media. The journalists in this town just took it hook, line, and sinker. Justin Katz from the Ocean State Current and the Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity was on the show last night. He too was flabbergasted by the rollover on this hire.
It's been a trend we've been seeing not only nationally but also in Rhode Island with the race to do a budget last year. It's almost like they're not even interested in pretending anymore. And there's a certain level of just, if you can be audacious enough to hire somebody through a nonprofit, everybody, it took much of the news media, except present company excluded, to figure out something was weird about that, because it was celebrated.
So listen, the URI Foundation folks threw up over the idea that they were spending $7,000 to fund Gina Raimondo's trip to Switzerland. The Rhode Island College Foundation is setting aside $250,000 for the position, salary, benefits, and other expenses, for this innovation officer to be hired at a cabinet level position reporting directly to the governor. That's a position that needs to be approved by the Senate, paid for by taxpayer dollars, argued, debated, and legitimized and defended by the governor. Faking left and going right and asking the Rhode Island College Foundation to fund that person and project is outrageous. And so if the trustees had a lot of feedback at the URI Foundation over the trip, I would imagine that the Rhode Island College trustees ought to gear up for the feedback that they're finally going to get when everyone around here goes, oh, yeah, we shouldn't be doing that. Why the governor hasn't figured that out, beyond me. Okay, a better day at the State House yesterday, a lighter moment, but a poignant moment, no doubt. As Dorian made his appearance at his own State House, he's probably more popular throughout the entire world right now. The headline is gripping and the story is compelling.
He wanted to be famous. Now Dorian Murray is so much more.
He has selflessly taught people from all 7 continents what it means to be D-strong.
Tonight, the Rhode Island General Assembly honored Dorian with a resolution declaring today #D-Strong Day, because the little 8-year-old boy from Westerly suffering from terminal cancer has been an inspiration not just here in Rhode Island, but all over the world. For today, he was Senator Dorian Murray. He even sat in Senate President Teresa Paiva-Weed's chair.
It really is a special day here in the Senate to be able to give and offer our support for not just him, but for his family.
People still are sending in pictures from all over the world, and it's just incredible. It's hard to even keep up with.
Dorian's friends all came wearing blue, even his girlfriend.
Because his favorite color is blue.
A surprise appearance by Governor Gina Raimondo sealed the deal. The whole chamber, the whole world, proud to be D-Strong.
You know, speaking of marketing, you know, the Republican Party, with their waste-o-meter, could get some advice from Dorian on how to get some attention. It's a charming, gut-wrenching story. I mean, we pray for his well-being, but the prognosis is not good. Hey, we tried. Even Lexi had me put that up on the website. And the other night, as I called the game at URI behind the PA microphone, I was instructed to compel the entire audience of the Ryan Center to put up the signs, and they did. And it's quite a scheme. It's quite a story. God bless him. All right. Have you been following this conversation about HPV virus and vaccines and all that kind of stuff? Look at this headline that just ran in the last week or so regarding this health mandate from the State Department of Health. Shawna Lawton is here. She's from the Rhode Island Alliance for Vaccine Choice. Welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us today.
I'm completely confused about this. So the State Department of Health decided that they were going to mandate for those entering the 7th grade that they get this, what's the name of the vaccine? Gardasil, to prevent them from getting the HPV virus, which of course is a sexually transmitted disease. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So you're looking for legislation to stop it.
We're looking for legislation to reverse the mandate for the HPV vaccine.
Is that the same thing? Same, more or less the same thing. More or less, you don't want families to be told what vaccines their kids have to have.
Correct.
In this particular category of affliction, disease, you're not one of those people opposed to vaccines. You know, the whole medical list of things that have been kind of commonplace for mommy and daddy to say, yeah, hit the baby with it, that kind of thing. No?
No, I am personally not opposed to vaccines. I think one of the really great things about our group is that there are parents who believe in vaccines, and there are parents who have not administered any vaccines to their children. Our real concern and what our focus is to make sure that parental choice stays intact, and by mandating this vaccine, that was taken away.
All right, it's hard to argue the parental choice aspect of this. It's also hard to figure out whether this policy packs any punch. We'll talk about that when we continue. Stay with us. The vaccine is expensive, I'm told. The HPV vaccine. What does it run per shot? You know?
Around $162 or so.
Covered by most insurance programs?
Yes.
So of course, if you're uninsured and you've got an expense or you've got a deductible, like a lot of insurance coverages
then the state has it for you.
Meaning?
They will provide it for you.
Free?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So you are opposing the state's mandate for 7th graders to have the HPV vaccine because it's a sexually transmitted disease. It's not something that's acquired in school. It's not lice. It's not, I have a nephew who just got lice.
Chicken pox.
Chicken pox. All that
Mumps.
stuff that we think is, this one, it's a genital issue, and there's not a lot of genital activity, hopefully, going on in the 7th grade classrooms.
We would hope not.
We would hope not. I mean, it's 2016. It's crazy out
right.
there. So you have asked at least one legislator to forward some legislation on this, which makes perfect sense to me. Highlight for me what you're trying to get accomplished here.
So one, to reverse the mandate. The other issue or cause for concern was the religious exemption form was threatened last year. While they were mandating this particular vaccine, they were also working to remove the religious exemption from the bill.
What's the religious exemption application to this?
So the religious exemption form will allow parents to choose whether or not to vaccinate their children, and by filling out this form and submitting it to the school will then submit it to the Department of Health.
Based on I love Jesus, this shouldn't happen. I don't know where. I mean, I understand parents optioning every option they can, or finding every option they can to try to avoid this if they think it's not necessary, because no vaccine comes without some side effects and all that kind of stuff, blah, 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 right? So we'll talk about that in a second. But I don't even understand what the religious aspect of this. I don't get it. I'm missing this one too.
Okay, so
not that I asked you to defend it.
No.
You're doing a good job of
we
giving
can
both
back
sides.
if we back up a little bit further and we go back to the early '90s. There was also a philosophical exemption form that was in place that was removed, and so parents could either use a religious based on religious beliefs. Maybe my child isn't sexually active. Maybe there's an ingredient within the vaccine that is against my religion. So there are different reasons why someone might use the religious exemption. But there's also a group of parents who believe that they shouldn't have to base their choice on a religious reason when they should be able to use a philosophical exemption. So that's another point, another issue that we've proposed, to have the philosophical reintroduced. We'd also like the Department of Health to be held more accountable. In Rhode Island, the Department of Health can make these decisions without anyone in the General Assembly knowing about this. So they can just decide to mandate or unmandate anything and are not held accountable. They don't even have to hold public hearings for parents. So, holding them more accountable and...
Yeah. No, listen, I think, go ahead.
No,
Finish
go
your
ahead.
thought. Well, as I listen to you, there are certain things I don't think the DOH should have to get your approval or my approval for, and those things would be any issue, especially when you get a flu epidemic or a disease that's moving through, that's contagious, that is emergent, and even if it's not contagious or emergent, you got a situation where it's fairly well understood by the medical community that we need this vaccine in the general population to prevent something terrible from happening. So I'm not so sure I want to put a bunch of restrictions on the DOH about how they do business. In this particular case, I have to think that you guys are on the right page, because this particular vaccination doesn't solve a disease that fits any of those categories.
You're right.
Right. My recommendation to you in your efforts is not necessarily to come down on the heavy in terms of the DOH process, but that they just screwed this one up.
Yes, I agree to some extent, but if we think about what might happen further down the road, think about you are going away on vacation and the Department of Health feels that they need to mandate the Ebola vaccine that's coming down the pipeline. So if they decide to mandate this, and they remove, and the religious exemption is removed, then you have to have the Ebola vaccine. So there's no choice. There's no opportunity for choice. The other issue here is that there is a breakdown in informed consent right now here in this state. Meaning that parents are not being informed of everything that is encompassing this vaccine. They're not being informed about the adverse reactions. They're not being informed that there is a religious exemption. You'll head into your pediatrician and they'll say, your children are having these three vaccines today. They administer the vaccines, there's no discussion about it, and you receive a 1-page of possible reactions that you might have. Well, if I look at the 1 page that the pediatrician is giving me, and I look at the 39-page paperwork that comes from the pharmaceutical company based on this, I was not informed.
All right. When we come back, we're going to talk about the DOH response, which is maybe the DOH didn't respond to this show because she's too good. Stay with us. All right, so Shauna is here. She's with the Rhode Island Alliance for Vaccine Choice. We got a lot of organizations in the state, but for this particular purpose, I get it. Parents How many formal members of your organization are there in Rhode Island right now since the DOH, Department of Health, mandated this HPV virus vaccine?
You know, there's probably about 2,500 or so people. You know, but I hear from people daily. I heard from the Vermont Coalition for Vaccine Choice the other day. We love what you're doing. You know, we're using your parent packet that we put together.
At the same time, there are other states that are actually looking at what Rhode Island's done and say, well, we want to do that too. I think we had a headline from Boston where they're looking to do the same thing. That's one. Oh, is that from the Boston Globe? Yes. Okay, so parents are protesting in Massachusetts as well. Good. It seems. Listen, I like to see parents active on X number of things. But when it comes to their kids' health, guess what? Game's on, right? Here's what I don't get, Shauna. Maybe you can argue the opposition thinking here. Okay, so you better get the vaccine going into 7th grade. And the docs are kind of doing it as part of protocol, like if you're not paying attention, zap, they're getting the vaccine. I get it. But what happens if you don't get it and you don't sign the religious thing and blah, blah, blah? We have any cases where Sally or Johnny are being sent home because they don't have it?
Not that I've heard of. There's been, I think initially, and if I go back to last spring with my daughter, the paperwork came home from the Cranston School Department where we live and said your daughter has to have this vaccination, otherwise she'll be excluded from school. And so that's, you know, when it all started. It sure. does. And well, what happened to my rights? And
well, let me call you to action too. If you're not one, all right, I like you. You think about your rights. Most people go, oh, okay, we better do this. Okay, but if they don't do it, whatever. If you say I got rights, go to heck. What are they doing? I don't expect you to provide their argument, but if the DOH would respond positively to our invitation to come here and try to answer this woman's good questions, I think that would be good for the state of Rhode Island, because to be honest with you, you got a policy that's got no teeth.
Well, they ended up backstabbing. They ended up, you know, once they realized that
there were
stepping.
Okay, yeah.
Realized that they couldn't. The religious exemption was in place, and that they didn't want children to be excluded from school. And so they said, okay, well, we're not going to exclude anyone from school, even though it is a mandate, but you have to have your religious exemption paperwork in place. Kids are getting notices from school that they haven't had it or haven't filled out a form. Are they being excluded from school? I do not know.
All right, listen. You've done a good job explaining both sides. I think it's a fairly simple conversation, to be honest with you. What do you want people to do? I got 30 seconds here. What do you want people to do?
I want people to call their legislators and tell them that they have a concern with this mandate.
And there's a bill that has been written. Is it going to get into the hopper? Is it getting hearings yet? What's the story?
It should be the draft should be complete this week. So we'll have
more or
an
less
idea.
what it says. So if you don't have a communicable disease issue here, stop mandating that we got to do this stuff. It's really that simple, isn't it?
It is.
All right.
Remove the mandate. If you're not going to enforce it, then you need to remove it.
That's what I said.
I know.
Nice job. If I get the DOH here, will you come back?
I definitely will come back.
I knew the answer to that question. Final word when we come back. Stay with us. Message to the DOH, we are going to look for some answers on this HPV vaccine. You know, better late than never, and probably support this legislation to give some pause to it. I think Shauna put it best. No teeth, no policy. By the way, the policy is not well thought out. Okay, I don't need. We don't need. We got a mommy state running around here these days. We don't need no mommies. Remember that. We'll see you on the radio tomorrow at noon on WPRO. We'll talk about Flint, Michigan. Could it happen here with the water? Tomorrow night on Daniel's State of Mind. Thanks for watching.